Deep in a quiet village, a young storyteller named Alara felt a pull toward the ancient whispering woods. She carried a single, burning hope to find the legendary dragon's tear gem. Its magic, the old tale said, could weave stories of unparalleled comfort and wonder for her people. But the woods held their breath, a place of shifting paths and elusive enchantments, where many who entered were never quite the same. By the end of this journey, you will discover how a simple act of courage can illuminate the most profound myths, bringing light to the darkest of nights. Where are you listening from right now, and what does the sky look like outside your window? Alara knew the woods were a labyrinth of mystery, where reality bent and shadows whispered secrets. What kind of magic do you think waits in the oldest, quietest places of the world? Alara stepped into the whispering woods, her every sense alive to the shifting air. The old tales were her map, warning of routes that could trip the unwary and patches of earth that were not as solid as they seemed. She moved with deliberate care, her eyes scanning for the subtle signs mentioned in the stories: a broken branch pointing east, a cluster of stones arranged in a certain way. This was not a place for haste. Her patience was soon rewarded as the path opened onto the bank of a shimmering stream, its waters flowing with a light that seemed to come from within. There, nestled among the polished stones, lay a single scale, larger than her hand, that glowed with a soft, internal fire. As her fingers brushed its smooth, warm surface, a wave of certainty washed over her. The dragons were real. They had been here, and their legacy was waiting to be found. But the woods are a realm of constant change. Without warning, a thick, silent fog poured from between the ancient trees, swallowing the light and sound until Alara could see only a few steps in any direction. The familiar path vanished, and a cold dread whispered at the edges of her thoughts. Had she already strayed from the way? She closed her eyes, forcing her breathing to slow, and reached for the memory of the myths. It was then she heard it, a faint, melodic hum, weaving through the oppressive silence. It was a sound that felt both strange and deeply familiar, a thread of music from the oldest songs. A choice lay before her, to stay rooted in fear, or to trust the instinct that told her this was a guide. With a deep breath, she turned toward the hum, letting the gentle vibration lead her forward one cautious step at a time. The fog did not so much clear as it simply dissolved, revealing a wood transformed. She stood in a grove of trees whose bark shone like silver, and the air was still. Yet the profound silence was soon broken by a soft rustling in the canopy above, a sound that suggested movement just out of sight. She was not alone. The scale in her pocket felt suddenly heavier, a beacon that might have been seen by other, hidden residents of the forest. As she stood there, heart pounding, her eyes caught a new detail on the forest floor. A trail of luminous moss, each patch glowing with a faint green light, began at her feet and wound its way into the deepening shadows ahead, an unspoken invitation to venture further into the unknown. The luminous moss led Alara into a clearing that stole her breath. Ancient trees arched overhead, their bark shimmering with a soft, internal blue light that pulsed gently, like a sleeping heartbeat. The very air seemed to hum with a quiet, living energy. Drawn to the base of the largest tree, she knelt and found its surface covered in intricate carvings. Her fingers traced the grooves, feeling the story they told. One depicted a great dragon, its wings outstretched, flying toward a constellation of 7 stars. Another showed the same stars arranged in a circle above a triangular mountain. She studied them intently, her mind piecing together the images. The dragon flies to the stars, but the stars rest upon the mountain. It was a riddle. The answer had to be the Mountain of Echoes, a place mentioned in the oldest village songs. Yet as she understood, she noticed with a pang of sorrow that the edges of the carvings were growing faint, the ancient lines fading as if the memory they held was slowly being forgotten. A sudden, gentle breeze stirred the silence, swirling fallen leaves from the silver trees into a living, shifting wall that encircled the grove. It was not a violent barrier, but a silent, magical test. The exit was gone, replaced by a kaleidoscope of amber and gold. Ilara's heart beat faster, but she closed her eyes, remembering the starlight pattern from the tree carving. Opening them, she began gathering smooth, pale stones from the stream bank. With careful hands, she arranged them on the mossy ground, one by one, replicating the 7-pointed star she had seen. As she placed the final stone, the swirling leaves stilled, fluttering gently to the ground and revealing the path once more. A quiet victory warmed her, but it was short-lived. The grove's beautiful bioluminescent light dimmed noticeably, the blue glow retreating into the trees, as if her success had required a piece of its magic. A new urgency tightened in her chest. This ancient power was not infinite. Each clue she unlocked, each barrier she passed, was consuming the very wonder she sought to preserve. She had to find the dragon's tear before the last light faded from these woods. As she stepped from the grove, a new sound reached her ears, distant yet clear. Harmonious chimes, like crystals touching in a wind she could not feel, drifted down from the high peaks ahead, calling her toward the Mountain of Echoes. The crystalline bridge arched over a chasm filled with swirling mist, its structure seeming to be made of frozen light. As Ilara set foot upon it, a figure emerged from the shimmering air. A fox with fur like polished silver stood before her, its eyes holding a deep, ancient knowing. It did not move, its playful stance a silent but firm question. Ilara understood this was a guardian, and her passage required more than just courage. Remembering the old ways of her village, where a shared meal could turn a stranger into a friend, she slowly opened her pack. She broke a piece of honey cake, the scent sweet and comforting, and placed it gently on the bridge between them. The fox regarded her for a long moment, then darted forward, taking the offering with a delicate grace. It then turned and led her away from the bridge, down a narrow path she would have never seen, to a hidden spring where the water flowed over stones of pure crystal. Peering into the pool, Ilara gasped. The water did not show her reflection, but instead held fleeting visions of majestic wings against a twilight sky and the shimmering trails of dragon flight. But as she reached toward the water, the silver fox vanished. One moment it was there, the next it was simply gone, leaving only the rustle of a fern in its wake. A cold trickle of doubt ran through her. Was this creature a guide, or a trickster of the woods leading her astray? She stood alone, the magical visions in the water already fading. Taking a steadying breath, she made a choice. She did not call out in panic, but instead spoke softly to the surrounding trees. She told a story, a simple tale from her village of a child who showed kindness to a wounded bird and was later guided safely home through a storm by a flock of those same birds. She spoke of the belief that empathy weaves its own magic, a thread that connects all living things. As her last word faded, the silver fox stepped back into the clearing, its intelligent eyes now holding a new respect. It gave a soft, approving chuff and nudged her hand with its nose, its presence now a clear promise of guidance. But as they began to walk, the fox paused, looking back toward the distant mountain with a low growl that was more warning than threat. It was a sound that spoke of shadows that clung where light did not reach, and of unseen eyes watching their progress. The emotional stakes of her quest sharpened instantly. She was not merely searching for a gem, she was moving through a landscape of ancient balances and hidden conflicts. With the fox trotting confidently ahead, Alara felt a new, fragile sense of companionship. Together, they began to ascend a sloping path where the air grew thinner and the harmonious chimes from the high peaks grew ever clearer, each step taking them closer to the mysteries of the Mountain of Echoes. The air thinned as they climbed, and the wind began to speak. It was not a howl, but a chorus of soft, overlapping whispers that curled around the high stone peaks. Alara strained to listen, her fox companion's ears twitching at every shift in the air. Within the rush, she could just make out fragments of a melody, a series of resonant notes that felt older than the mountain itself. They were the scattered remnants of an ancient dragon song, a lullaby meant to soothe the very rock to sleep. She knew she had to gather these pieces to make the song whole again. But the higher they went, the more the winds fought back, buffeting her with gales that tugged at her cloak and tried to steal her balance. The whispers grew jumbled, turning from guidance into a chaotic echo of 1,000 lost voices, each one vying for her attention. It was a test of focus, a challenge to find a single thread of truth in a tapestry of noise. Closing her eyes against the disorienting push, she shut out the chaos and listened only for the clearest, kindest whisper, the one that carried the gentle rhythm of the lullaby. She began to hum, her voice a fragile counterpoint to the mountain's roar. At first, the notes were swallowed by the gale, but she persisted, singing the melody with a steady, unwavering heart. As the final note left her lips, the winds did not cease, but they gentled, becoming a calm, carrying breeze. Before them, the very rock of the mountainside shimmered, and a grand archway of intertwined stone, previously invisible, solidified into view. It was a doorway, a shortcut carved not by tools, but by harmony. The fox approached the newly revealed entrance, its silver fur bristling. It did not cross the threshold into the dim cave beyond, instead pausing to emit a low, uncertain whine. Its hesitation was a clear message. The path ahead was shielded from the sun and wind, a place where different, deeper magic slept. Alara placed a reassuring hand on the fox's head, then turned to face the darkness. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the cave, her footsteps echoing softly as she ventured toward the inner chambers of the mountain. The cave walls were alive with light. Crystals of every size and color pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow, and Alara soon realized their light was synced with the steady beat of her own heart. As she reached out, her fingertips brushing the cool, smooth surface of a large amethyst cluster, it flared brightly. Instantly, the cavern walls became a canvas for dancing shadows. The silhouettes of great, winged dragons soaring and diving in a silent, ancient ballet. The crystals were not just minerals, they were memories, holding the echoes of a lost age. In response to her touch, a path deeper into the mountain began to illuminate, each crystal flaring to life in sequence like a trail of fallen stars. Yet this beautiful guidance also revealed a more somber story. Etched into the stone beside the glowing path were deep, parallel grooves, the unmistakable marks of powerful claws. They were joined by carved symbols that spoke not of glory, but of a profound and lingering sorrow, a loss so great it had been scored into the very heart of the mountain. The way forward was not without its challenges. While most of the crystals shone with a constant, reassuring light, others sputtered and flickered erratically, casting confusing, jumping shadows. A low, resonant hum vibrated through the cavern floor, a sound that seeped into her bones and clouded her thoughts, making it difficult to concentrate. Which path was true, and which was a trick of the light and sound? Alara closed her eyes for a moment, seeking the calm center within herself. When she opened them, her choice was clear. She would follow only the crystals that glowed most steadily, trusting their unwavering constancy over the distracting, frantic flickers. It was a choice for truth over chaos. This decision led her into a vast, circular chamber that took her breath away. At its center stood a magnificent dragon, carved from obsidian so pure it seemed to drink the light from the air. It was a statue, powerful and still, its wings folded and its head bowed as if in an eternal sleep. The moment Alara entered, the guiding crystals along the walls dimmed, their collective light withdrawing into a soft, expectant gleam. The silence was heavy with meaning. It was clear that this slumber was not permanent, but required something of her, a gesture of significance to rekindle its spirit. As she stepped closer to the dormant guardian, her eyes fell upon a small, empty basin carved into the stone at its massive feet. It was perfectly round and smooth, clearly fashioned with intention. This was no accidental depression in the rock. It was an altar, a place waiting for an offering, and its emptiness asked a silent, pressing question of the young storyteller. What could she possibly give that would be worthy of awakening such an ancient power? The empty basin was a silent question, waiting for an answer. Alara knelt before the obsidian dragon, her eyes searching the smooth stone for any clue, and there, carved in fine script around the basin's rim, she found them. Words emerged from the stone, and she read them aloud, her voice a soft echo in the vast chamber. They spoke of memories fading like mist, of hope being the last ember in the dark, and of a gift given not from wealth, but from the heart. As she spoke the final line, a deep, resonant voice, not from the statue, but from the air itself, echoed her last words. It asked for a token of pure intent. Her mind raced. What did she have that was pure enough? Her hand went to the worn leather scroll case at her belt, containing the cherished stories of her village, her very identity as a storyteller. She thought of her only map, her guide through this labyrinth, or even the voice that gave her stories life. Each choice felt like losing a part of herself. To offer her voice would be to silence her purpose. To give her map would be to surrender her way home. But the scroll, her collection of old tales, represented the comfort of the known. Placing it in the basin meant trusting that new stories awaited, that her quest was not just about finding magic, but about creating it. With a resolve that quieted her trembling hands, she unbound the scroll and laid it gently in the empty stone. The moment it touched the basin, the parchment did not burn or crumble. It dissolved into a cascade of shimmering light, the words themselves lifting from the page and swirling upward like a constellation of fireflies. A deep, grinding rumble filled the chamber as the great stone dragon shifted, its head lifting ever so slightly. A section of the floor behind it slid away without a sound, revealing a dark, narrow staircase descending into the mountain's heart. A wave of profound vulnerability washed over Alara. Her old stories were gone, the familiar tales that had always been her anchor. She was now a storyteller without her stories, standing at the edge of an even deeper unknown. Taking a steadying breath that did little to calm the flutter in her chest, she stepped onto the first cold step. The silver fox followed without hesitation, its warm presence a small comfort as a cool, damp breeze rose from the darkness below to greet them. The staircase spiraled down into a perfect, circular chamber where the air felt thick and still. Alara's first footstep did not fade but multiplied, bouncing from the smooth, dark walls in a cascade of repeating taps that disoriented her completely. Every tiny sound, from the rustle of her cloak to the fox's soft panting, was instantly amplified into a chorus of itself. A single misstep created a chaotic symphony that made the room itself seem to spin. She stood perfectly still, waiting for the last echo to die, and understood this was another test of harmony. Taking a deep breath, she clapped her hands together once, sharply. The sound fractured, ricocheting around the room in a confusing jumble. But when she tried again, this time with a steady, rhythmic beat, something remarkable happened. The echoes began to align, and with a specific 3-pulse pattern, a section of the wall across from her shimmered, becoming as clear as glass for a fleeting moment before solidifying again. She focused, recalling the deep, resonant thrum she had felt from the dormant guardian above, the rhythm of a sleeping heart. She clapped that slow, powerful rhythm, 1, 2, 3, a pause, then 1, 2, 3 again. This time, the wall did not just shimmer, it vanished entirely, revealing a small, deep alcove that had been hidden for ages. Inside rested a simple lantern, its metalwork tarnished and dark, its interior empty and cold. It was an ancient thing, said in the oldest tales to be fueled not by oil or flame, but by captured starlight. The moment the alcove was revealed, the chamber's nature turned. A sudden, sharp sound from a dislodged pebble under her boot created a storm of echoes that slammed back into her, the overlapping waves of sound distorting her sense of up and down and sending a wave of dizziness through her. The walls seemed to press in, the chaotic noise of physical pressure testing her will. She had to calm the storm she had unwittingly unleashed. Closing her eyes against the spinning room, she did not shout for silence. Instead, she began to sing. It was the same gentle, repetitive lullaby she had used on the mountain, her voice a soft anchor in the acoustic chaos. She poured all her focus into the melody, making it a steady, unwavering thread. Slowly, the frantic echoes began to harmonize with her song, losing their jagged edges and blending into a supportive chorus. As the last note of her lullaby hung in the now calm air, the unlit lantern in the alcove began to glow. A soft, cool light swelled within it, not the warm flicker of a flame, but the constant, serene gleam of a starry night, pouring a pool of silver illumination into the chamber. Raising the lantern high, its light fell upon the walls, revealing magnificent murals that told a solemn story. They showed great, majestic dragons circling a brilliant, heart-shaped gem that pulsed with light, the legendary dragon's tear. But as Alara's eyes traced the artwork, her hope was tempered with a new urgency. The painted dragons at the beginning of the mural were vivid and strong, but further along, their colors grew faint, their forms becoming translucent, as if they were slowly fading from existence. The gem's own light dimmed in the later images. The magic was not just hidden, it was dwindling, a slow fade that demanded haste. With the starlit lantern held firmly before her, Alara saw a new path gleam into existence, a trail of faintly glowing stones leading away from the chamber of echoes and deeper into the mountain's silent heart. The path of glowing stones ended at a precipice, where a narrow rope bridge spanned a chasm of absolute darkness. Shifting shadows swarmed across its length, coiling into illusionary walls of thorny vines and gaping voids that seemed to swallow the very air. Alara's first instinct was to retreat, but the silver fox nudged her forward, its low growl a reminder that the only way was through. Raising the Starlight Lantern, she cast its steady beam ahead. The illusions recoiled from the pure, unwavering light, the false vines withering and the phantom holes sealing over, leaving a solid, if fragile, pathway across the abyss. Each step was a deliberate act of faith, the bridge groaning softly under her weight, but the lantern's beam held the shadows at bay, creating a small, safe circle of clarity in the overwhelming gloom. Halfway across, the retreating shadows did not dissipate. Instead, they coalesced directly in her path, forming a perfect mirror image of herself. This other Alara did not move to attack, but spoke with her own voice, its tone laced with a cold, knowing skepticism. "Why do you truly seek the dragon's tear?" it whispered, the sound echoing in the chasm. "Is it for the praise of your village, to become the hero of their tales? Or do you simply fear being forgotten, a storyteller with no great story of her own?" The words struck a deep, hidden chord of doubt, and for a terrifying moment, Alara felt her resolve waver. The bridge beneath her seemed to tremble. She closed her eyes, shutting out the phantom's piercing gaze, and searched for the truth she had carried since the beginning. "My quest is not for glory," she stated aloud, her voice firm and clear against the whispering void. "It is for the comfort of others, for stories that bring light to the dark. It is a gift, not a prize." As the final word left her lips, the mirror image shattered into 1,000 fragments of dissipating shadow, and the bridge grew steady and silent once more. She crossed the remaining distance with a heart both lighter and more resolute, stepping onto solid ground before the gaping entrance of the dragon's roost. The sight was humbling, a cavernous maw carved into the mountain that seemed to breathe out an air of immense age and power. But her moment of awe was cut short as the light in her lantern flickered, its brilliant silver gleam dimming to a weak, guttering glow. The magic within was finite, and her use of it to cross the bridge had consumed a precious portion. Time, which had felt endless in the woods, was now a tangible pressure. As the lantern flickered once more, Alara gazed up at the towering, silent roost, feeling the immense weight of the ancient space and a quiet trepidation for the final trial that lay within its depths. The dragon's roost opened around her, a vast open-air sanctuary carved high into the mountain peak. Moonlight streamed through the open ceiling, illuminating nests of woven crystal that cradled enormous stone-like eggs. The air hummed with a slumbering power, a deep and ancient silence. Drawn to the nearest nest, Alara reached out, her fingers gently brushing the cool, petrified surface of one egg. To her astonishment, a faint, warm pulse thrummed against her palm, a slow and steady rhythm of life waiting within the stone. As her touch lingered, the egg began to glow with a soft, golden light, and a wave of protective energy shimmered into being around her, a gentle shield. It was just in time. A sudden, chilling wind swept through the roost, a gust that carried the bite of forgotten winters and whispered of despair. The shield held firm, deflecting the cold that sought to snuff out her hope. From the swirling currents of that wind, a majestic, spectral dragon materialized. Its form was woven from moonlight and memory, and it circled above her, its vast, translucent wings making no sound. Its eyes, pools of ancient starlight, fixed upon her, and a voice that was not a sound, but a feeling directly in her mind, demanded an answer. Why does a human seek the dragon's tear? The weight of its gaze was immense, a judgment spanning centuries. Alara did not stand in defiance. She knelt, bowing her head in a gesture of deep respect, and opened her heart with complete honesty. She spoke of her village, not as a place needing a hero, but as a community whose nights were filled with quiet fears. She shared her simple, profound desire to weave a story of such comfort, of such wonder, that it could ease those fears and rekindle a sense of hope. She appealed to the dragon's own ancient legacy, not as a hoarder of treasure, but as a legendary guardian of dreams and a weaver of the world's oldest, most comforting tales. The spectral dragon descended, its luminous form hovering just before her. The stern judgment in its starlit eyes softened into something resembling recognition, then a deep, resonant sorrow. It was moved by the purity of her intent, by a request that sought not to take, but to give. The dragon's voice returned to her mind, now carrying a tone of guidance rather than interrogation. Your heart speaks true, little storyteller, but know this, the path you walk now turns inward. The tear you seek rests within the Heartstone Cave, a place that reflects not what you are, but the light you carry within. It does not test your strength, but the clarity of your spirit. Many have entered, but few have emerged, for the cave shows you the weight of your own heart. With these solemn words, the dragon inclined its great head in a blessing, and its form began to dissolve back into the mountain air. As it faded, the path ahead began to glow with soft, ethereal markers, like stepping stones of solidified moonlight. A new urgency filled Alara. The final test awaited, one she could not navigate with maps or cleverness. With the silver fox close at her heels, she hurried forward, following the gentle glow toward the entrance of the Heartstone Cave. The entrance to the Heartstone Cave was not stone, but a curtain of shimmering, liquid light. As Alara stepped through, the air itself seemed to pulse in time with her own heartbeat. The walls were not smooth rock, but a mosaic of countless embedded crystals, each one glowing with a soft, rhythmic light she instinctively knew was a reflection of her own inner world. These were the Heartstones, and they pulsed with her every feeling. With each step she took, focusing on the comforting stories she wished to bring home, the stones ahead brightened into a warm, golden pathway. But when a sliver of fear pricked her mind, a whisper of doubt about her worthiness, Those same stones would flicker and dim, and the path beneath her feet would tremble, its direction wavering. Progress was a delicate dance between her focus and her fears. A sudden, sharp memory surfaced, unbidden, the sting of a story she had once told that failed to comfort a grieving elder. The moment the regret touched her, the cave reacted violently. The glowing path constricted, narrowing until the walls pressed close, and from them erupted sharp, jagged crystals that gleamed with a cold, hostile light, blocking her way completely. The physical barrier was a manifestation of her own unresolved sorrow. Alara closed her eyes, pushing back against the dark memory. She consciously reached for brighter moments, for the laughter of children gathered at her feet, for the gratitude in an elder's eyes after a tale well told, for the simple, steadfast kindness her village had always shown her. She filled her mind with these images, letting the warmth of community and purpose flood through her. As she did, the sharp crystals retracted, their harsh light fading, and the path widened once more, the heartstones glowing with a steady, reassuring amber. It was a profound lesson. Her emotions were the very architecture of this place. Finally, she stepped into the cave's silent core. There, floating serenely above a simple stone pedestal, was the dragon's tear gem. It was more beautiful than any story had described, a teardrop of captured light that swirled with galaxies of deep blue and silver, yet her heart sank. Encasing the gem was a transparent, shimmering barrier that distorted the air around it. It was not a wall of magic, but one of pure, concentrated sorrow, a palpable grief left behind by the dragons, a lingering echo of their great loss. The gem was right there, but separated by an ocean of ancient sadness. Seeing her goal so close, yet guarded by such profound emotion, Alara knew that force was useless. To claim the dragon's tear, she would have to find a way to gently soothe a sorrow that had lasted for ages. Alara did not reach for the gem. Instead, she sat before the shimmering wall of sorrow and began to speak. Her voice was soft, a gentle counterpoint to the cavern's heavy silence. She told a story of a great dragon, its scales like emeralds, who felt a profound loneliness after its kin had departed the world. This dragon did not hoard its grief, but instead began to mend the broken landscapes left behind, using its fiery breath not to destroy, but to warm the frozen soil so that new life could sprout. With every seedling it nurtured and every lost creature it guided home, the dragon found its own heart mending, its solitude replaced by the quiet joy of connection. As Alara wove her tale, the barrier of sorrow began to shimmer, delicate fractures spreading across its surface like frost on a window pane. The dragon's tear gem at its center pulsed with a brighter, warmer light, drinking in the narrative of hope. But ancient grief does not yield easily. The barrier fought back, not with force, but with haunting visions. Illusions bloomed in the air around her, showing majestic dragons curled in empty, silent caverns, their great wings folded in defeat, their starlit eyes dim with the belief that they had been utterly forgotten by the world. A whisper, cold and insidious, threaded its way into her mind. Why do you persist? Your stories are but fleeting sounds. They cannot comfort a loss this vast. Give up and rest here with us in the quiet. For a moment, Alara's own breath caught, the weight of their loneliness threatening to smother her words. She could have turned away, shielding her own heart from the overwhelming sadness, but she made a different choice. She let the story of the Emerald Dragon fade, and began to share a piece of herself. She spoke of her own childhood, of feeling like an outsider in her village, of the long, quiet evenings when she would sit by her window, watching others and feeling a deep, unspoken isolation. It was in those moments that she first turned to the old tales, finding in their rhythms and characters a solace she could not find elsewhere. Storytelling did not just give her a purpose, it became the bridge that connected her solitary heart to the hearts of everyone in her village. It healed her. Her voice trembled with the raw honesty of the admission, a profound vulnerability offered to the ancient sorrow. The effect was immediate and profound. The wall of concentrated grief did not shatter, but dissolved, its particles drifting apart like mist, burned away by the morning sun. The dragon's tear gem was now completely unguarded, hovering serenely above the pedestal, its inner light swirling with a gentle, inviting warmth. Yet the moment the barrier fell, the entire Heartstone Cave trembled. A deep, grinding vibration passed through the floor, and from the depths of the mountain came a low, resonant hum, like a great mechanism stirring to life after millennia of slumber. The act of soothing this ancient sorrow had not gone unnoticed. It had disturbed the mountain's deep, magical equilibrium. With the cave still humming around her, Alara reached out, her fingers tingling with a powerful, gathering energy as they neared the glowing surface of the dragon's tear gem. Her fingers closed around the dragon's tear gem, and its warmth flooded through her. The cave erupted in a brilliant, golden light that pulsed in a steady rhythm, a perfect echo of her own heartbeat. Visions cascaded into her mind, not as disjointed images, but as a profound, flowing understanding. She saw dragons, not as solitary hoarders of treasure, but as celestial weavers, their flight paths stitching together the fabric of the night sky. She felt the resonance of their shared stories, tales of unity between earth and sky, of fire that warmed rather than consumed, and of a harmony that once existed between all living things. This was the true magic of the gem, a living library of mythic balance. The mountain groaned in protest, a deep, grinding vibration that shook loose stones from the ceiling. Distant, thunderous roars echoed through the caverns, a sound of ancient guardians awakened and displeased. The Heartstone Cave was coming apart, and the path behind her was already crumbling. Clutching the gem tightly to her chest, its protective warmth a shield against the falling debris, she turned and ran. The silver fox darted ahead, a flash of silver in the chaotic gloom, its instincts navigating the labyrinth of collapsing tunnels and shifting stone passages where her eyes saw only danger. The ground shuddered violently, and a great chasm tore, open directly in her path, a widening mouth of darkness that separated her from the exit. There was no time for hesitation. With a final, desperate surge of strength, fueled by the gem's energy, she leaped, her feet finding purchase on the far edge as stones skittered into the abyss below. She scrambled forward, the fox at her side, as the tunnel behind them collapsed in a roar of dust and rock. They burst out into the open air, the cool night, a shocking contrast to the cave's violent tremors. Alara stumbled to a halt, gasping deep, clean breaths, the dragon's tear gem still glowing warmly in her hand. She turned to look back at the mountain, which now stood silent and still, as if settling back into an ancient slumber. The immediate danger had passed, but the weight of the gem in her palm was a constant reminder that her journey was not yet over. She now carried a piece of that mountain's heart, and a legacy that demanded to be shared. The night air felt different on the return journey, the shadows less dense, and the path more welcoming. With the dragon's tear gem held before her, its gentle light did not just push back the darkness, it transformed it. Where its soft luminescence touched the forest floor, delicate night-blooming flowers unfurled their petals in a silent, rapid ballet of color. Shy forest creatures, from watchful owls to curious foxes, did not scatter at their approach. They simply observed from a respectful distance, their eyes reflecting the gem's peaceful glow, creating a silent, reverent escort through the woods. This tranquility was soon tested. From the deeper thickets, forms of shifting mist and shadow drifted into their path. They were not solid, but their whispers were chillingly clear, weaving through the air like a cold draft. "You have earned this power," they murmured, their voices a collective hiss. "Why dilute its magic for others? Keep it. Let your name be the one remembered in every story told." Imagine the comfort you could hoard for yourself alone. The temptation was a physical weight, a sudden, greedy impulse to clutch the gem tight and run. But Alara did not falter. She thought of the lonely child she once was, and the community that had saved her with their shared warmth. She raised the gem higher, not as a weapon, but as a beacon. "I carry this light for everyone," she stated, her voice ringing with a conviction that surprised even her. "Its magic is meant to be a gift, not a possession." As she projected this pure intention of generosity, the gem flared with a brilliant, cleansing silver light. The shadowy figures recoiled, their forms dissolving into harmless, scattered mist that was quickly absorbed by the peaceful night. A quiet victory settled in her chest, but it was accompanied by a new, sobering awareness. With each act of resistance, each purposeful use of the gem's power, she felt a subtle drain on its energy. The glow, while still beautiful, pulsed with a slightly slower, softer rhythm. The magic was not infinite. It was a precious resource that needed a purpose, a story to be woven before its light faded entirely. This urgency quickened her steps, the silver fox matching her pace. Then, through a break in the ancient trees, she saw it. The first hints of dawn painted the sky in hues of soft rose and gold, and nestled in the valley below were the familiar, gentle lights of her village. A profound sense of homecoming washed over her, carrying with it the immense weight and wonder of the tale she was now ready to bring to life. The familiar scent of wood smoke and baking bread welcomed Alara home. As she stepped from the tree line into the village common, a hush fell over the early morning activities. Then, a cry went up, and within moments she was surrounded. Faces etched with worry and relief greeted her, their hands reaching out to touch her cloak, to assure themselves she was real. She smiled, her own weariness forgotten, and slowly uncurled her fingers to reveal the dragon's tear gem. Its gentle radiance spilled into the space between them, a visible wave of calm. A fretful child, moments before on the verge of tears, grew quiet, her small hand reaching for the light as a deep sense of peace settled over her features. An elder, who often bore the weight of years in the set of his shoulders, let out a soft sigh, the lines on his face seeming to soften in the gem's warm glow. A collective wonder spread through the gathering crowd, a tangible feeling of shared awe, but not every voice was filled with wonder. A practical-minded farmer, gripping the handle of his tool, voiced the concern hanging in the air. That is a powerful magic you have brought among us, Alara. But what happens when its light dims? Will it not attract the attention of others who might seek to take it by force? Another villager nodded in grim agreement, their fear a stark contrast to the gem's soothing energy. This division was a new kind of challenge, a conflict not of shadows and illusions, but of hope, wrestling with doubt right in the heart of her community. Alara looked from the hopeful faces of the children to the wary eyes of the adults, and she understood that the true magic was not in the gem itself, but in what they chose to do with it. Her decision was immediate. "We will not wait for the magic to fade or for fear to take root," she announced, her voice clear and strong. "Tonight, as the sun sets, we will use its light together. I will tell a new story, but it will not be mine alone. I ask every one of you to add your own hopes, your own dreams to the tale. We will weave them together, and in doing so, we will give the gem a purpose greater than any one person." The emotional stakes of this single evening were immense. This story would either bind the community together, making the dragon's tear a lasting symbol of their shared spirit, or it would prove a fleeting wonder, deepening the divide and leaving Alara as just a storyteller who had brought back a beautiful, temporary trinket. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the villagers prepared the central storytelling circle with a quiet reverence. They brought out benches and laid soft blankets upon the grass, their faces illuminated by both the rising moon and the gem's soft, steady glow. The air itself seemed to hum with a gentle anticipation, setting the stage for a night where stories would not merely be told, but born from the collective heart of the village. Alara placed the dragon's tear gem in the center of the circle, and the air began to shimmer with latent energy. She started not with a grand epic, but with a simple whisper about a dragon whose wings were the color of twilight. As she spoke, the gem pulsed, and the words lifted from her lips to become shimmering silhouettes in the air. A great, graceful beast, soaring against a canvas of emerging stars. The villagers watched, mesmerized, as the story unfolded visually above them. Then she paused, her gaze sweeping over the faces lit by the magical display. "This story is not mine to finish alone," she said softly. "What did the dragon see as it flew over the sleeping world?" A young woman, her hands still dusted with flour from the evening's baking, spoke up. "It saw a river made of liquid moonlight," she offered. The gem brightened, and a ribbon of shimmering silver wove itself into the aerial tapestry. Another voice joined, then another, each new detail: a mountain that sang, a forest that remembered every footstep, adding a new thread of light and color to the collective dream. For a few precious moments, the entire village was united, wrapped in a narrative they were building together. But the flow of creation hit a subtle snag. A young boy named Leo, known for his quiet nature, watched the story unfold with wide, anxious eyes. He clasped his hands tightly in his lap, shrinking back as if hoping the shadows would swallow him. The magical images in the air flickered, their vibrant colors dimming as the communal inspiration wavered. The story itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Alara felt the hesitation like a chill in the warm night. She moved without hurry, settling on the ground beside him so their eyes were level. She did not ask for a grand idea. Instead, her voice was a gentle murmur meant only for him. "Leo, what is your favorite animal to watch in the meadows?" The boy blinked, surprised by the simplicity of the question. "A rabbit," he whispered, so softly the word was almost lost, but the gem heard it. Alara smiled and turned back to the story, and so the great dragon, flying over the singing mountain, looked down and saw a little rabbit, its fur as soft as the first snow, and in its eyes was a courage as vast as the night sky. As she spoke, the gem projected a new image, a small, brave rabbit, looking up at the starlit dragon, a connection forged between the mighty and the meek. A slow, wondrous smile spread across Leo's face. The story was his now, too. His simple contribution did not diminish the tale, it grounded it, making it more real and relatable for everyone. With that final, inclusive thread, the narrative surged to its conclusion. The gem did not simply brighten, it swelled with a radiance that felt alive, its magic amplified and deepened by every unique voice that had shaped the story. Alara felt a distinct shift within the artifact, a sensation not of draining, but of settling. Its energy peaked, then stabilized into a constant, gentle thrum, like a heartbeat finding its perfect, resting rhythm. The last of the shimmering images dissolved into the night air, leaving behind a profound and comfortable silence. The gem's light softened, but did not fade, casting a permanent, serene glow over the storytelling circle. In that moment, Alara understood. The dragon's tear was not meant for a single, glorious use. It had chosen to stay, embedding its magic into the very soul of the village. It had become a beacon, not of power to be wielded, but of shared imagination and deep, restorative rest for all who gathered near. The very next day, the villagers gathered at the forest's edge, their tools not weapons of defense, but extensions of care. Together, they built a simple, open shrine, from river-smoothed stones and fallen branches, a structure that seemed to have grown from the earth itself. At its heart, they placed the dragon's tear gem upon a thick cushion of living moss, where its light could spill out freely for anyone to find. Almost immediately, the land responded. Flowers of impossible colors bloomed overnight, their petals soft as velvet, and the air hummed with the gentle industry of bees and butterflies. Shy deer would step from the tree line to rest in the clearing, their presence a quiet blessing. It became a true sanctuary, a place where tangled thoughts could unravel and new ideas could quietly take root. Yet this beauty also cultivated a quiet unease in some. What if a traveler with a greedy heart sees this and tries to take it? One villager murmured, his eyes fixed on the gem's untended glow. Another worried that such open trust was an invitation for trouble. The discussion that followed was not loud, but it was deep, touching on the very nature of the community they wished to be. Alara listened to their fears with respect, then offered a different vision. The gem's greatest power has always been in connection, she reminded them. It was forged from shared stories and answered a selfless wish. To hide it away behind locks and suspicion would be to dim its magic from the inside out. Its true protection lies in our collective spirit and in the witness of all who find peace here. After much thoughtful discussion, the village made a choice that would define their future. They decided to welcome all peaceful visitors, to share the sanctuary's calm without condition. This decision was a profound test of their newfound unity, a gamble on the goodness of strangers. The first travelers to arrive were cautious, their postures stiff with the weariness of long roads. But as they sat in the shrine's clearing, listening to the villagers share simple tales of their day, something softened. A merchant from a distant city, initially drawn by rumor of a priceless jewel, found himself speaking instead of his own lonely childhood, a story he had not told in decades. As he shared, the gem pulsed with a warmer light, and he left not with a prize, but with a lighter heart and a promise to return. Each story shared by a visitor did not drain the gem, but seemed to feed it, its light spreading further and weaving a subtle tapestry of connection across the land. It became less a treasure to be guarded and more a symbol of a shared humanity, its magic growing in direct proportion to the generosity it inspired. Over the years, the shrine became a beloved landmark, a quiet star on the map for seekers of solace and inspiration. And Alara, now a woman whose own story was interwoven with legend, would often walk there at dusk. She would sit beside the gently glowing gem, place a hand upon the moss, and listen, for within its endless well of magic and memory, new tales were always waiting, ready to be born. One evening, the silver fox appeared at Alara's door, its coat shimmering in the twilight. It led her through the quiet village to the shrine, where the dragon's tear pulsed with a soft, steady rhythm. There, the creature nudged her hand with its cool nose, then turned its gaze toward the dark line of the whispering woods. The message was wordless, but perfectly clear. Its duty as a guide was fulfilled, and the ancient forest was calling it home. A sharp, sweet ache bloomed in Alara's chest, the sorrow of an impending goodbye. She knelt, her eyes meeting the fox's knowing gaze, and did not beg it to stay. Instead, she gave it the only gift that felt truly equal to their journey, a story. She whispered a tale of a curious girl and a clever fox, of a friendship forged on hidden paths and tested by shadowy illusions. She spoke of trust, given freely, and loyalty that never wavered. As the final words left her lips, the dragon's tear gem glowed with a sudden, deep warmth, as if affirming the truth of her telling. The fox leaned into her touch one last time, then turned and melted into the trees. For a long moment, Alara felt the emptiness its departure left behind, a quiet space where its playful presence had been. The magic of their quest felt suddenly distant, a brilliant dream fading with the dawn. She wondered if the extraordinary connection they shared would now become just another memory, its power dimming with the passage of ordinary days. The choice she made then was a small one, a simple promise to herself. On the night of every full moon, she would bring a piece of honey cake to the shrine and place it gently on the moss near the gem. It was not an attempt to summon the fox, but an act of remembrance, a way to honor their bond and affirm the living link between her village and the wild heart of the woods. This quiet ritual, repeated month after month, seemed to nourish more than just memory. The flowers in the clearing grew more vibrant, their colors richer and their scent more profound. The air itself hummed with a slightly stronger, more vibrant energy, and sometimes, in the deep quiet of the night, Alara would dream of running through sun-dappled glades beside a flash of silver. Or she would catch a glimpse from the corner of her eye, a familiar shape, watching from the forest's edge before vanishing like mist. These fleeting visits were not a return, but a reassurance, a quiet proof that some friendships are not bound by paths or proximity. With a final, playful flick of its tail that she would remember always, the fox was gone, leaving Alara alone at the shrine. But the sadness was now woven through with a profound gratitude and a deepened understanding of her own purpose. She was the keeper of stories, the guardian of a magic that thrived on connection, and her work was only just beginning. Alara's quiet evenings at the shrine soon filled with the bright, curious voices of children. They would gather around the dragon's tear, their small faces bathed in its light, and ask endless questions. Where do stories come from? Can I make one? She began to mentor them, not by reciting the old epics, but by encouraging them to look inward. She asked them to describe the shape of a cloud, the secret life of a river stone, or the dream they had last night. The gem responded to their budding imaginations, its light flickering in time with their creative sparks. One afternoon, a shy girl named Anya whispered a story about a moth with wings made of moonlight. As she spoke, the gem pulsed, and for a breathtaking moment, a shimmering, ethereal moth danced in the air above them before dissolving into sparks. The children gasped, and the village was enchanted. These fleeting illusions became a regular wonder, spontaneous proof that new stories held their own potent magic. Not everyone welcomed this change, however. A few of the elder storytellers, who had spent their lives preserving the precise cadence of the ancient tales, watched with concern. They gathered with Alara one evening, their expressions thoughtful but firm. The old ways have a specific rhythm, Alara, one elder named Kale said gently. They are like the bones of the mountain, unchanging and strong. These new fancies are beautiful, but will they be remembered in 100 years? This was not a hostile confrontation, but a sincere generational debate about the soul of their oral heritage. It pitted the comfort of tradition against the vibrant, unpredictable energy of innovation. Alara listened with deep respect, understanding their fear that the foundational stories of their people might be lost. Her solution was not to choose one over the other, but to weave them together. She proposed a festival of tales, a community gathering where the oldest myths would be honored alongside the newest imaginings. The entire village joined in the preparations, stringing lanterns and preparing feasts. On the night of the festival, the air itself seemed to vibrate with anticipation. The elders told the grand, sweeping saga of the mountain's creation, their voices steady and resonant. Then the children stepped forward, and with the dragon's tear glowing brightly, they shared their own stories. One boy spoke of a badger who could map the stars, and the gem projected a constellation that twinkled above the crowd. Anya told her moth story again, and this time the illusion lasted longer, floating over the listeners like a blessing. The festival's success was a turning point for the community. It solidified Alara's role not just as a storyteller, but as a wise leader who honored the past while making space for the future. The gem, having channeled both ancient and new narratives, seemed to burn with a deeper, more stable light, its magic affirmed as a unifier. Yet this very success cast a longer shadow. Travelers who attended the festival carried its wonder back to their homelands, and soon, quiet inquiries began to arrive. Messengers from distant libraries of myth and secluded orders of lore keepers asked polite but pointed questions about the legendary gem and the woman who served as its guardian. Alara's small village, once a quiet haven, was now a point of interest on a much larger map. As the seasons turned, Alara found her purpose evolving. She was no longer just the keeper of the dragon's tear, but a guardian of the dreams it inspired. Her reputation grew, painting her as a bridge between the simple world of her home and the vast, unknown world of ancient powers and those who studied them. She walked this new path with a quiet resolve, knowing that the gem's light had now shone far beyond their valley, and that such a beacon could attract all kinds of attention, both wondrous and wary. The myth keepers arrived with the autumn winds, their cloaks embroidered with celestial patterns, and their voices carrying the accents of distant lands. They sought an audience with Alara, their leader, a woman named Lyra, with eyes the color of weathered parchment, explaining they had journeyed for many months, drawn by whispers of a rekindled dragon magic. They asked not to take the gem, but to learn from it, to study its resonance with the ancient scrolls and star charts they carried. The village watched with a mixture of pride and wariness as Alara welcomed them to the shrine, where the dragon's tear pulsed a gentle welcome. Lyra and her companions unrolled their delicate scrolls, revealing maps of forgotten constellations and singing old, winding songs that spoke of dragons as architects of weather and weavers of dawn. These new layers of lore were like finding missing pieces of a beautiful, ancient puzzle, deepening the village's appreciation for the gem's place in a cosmic history far grander than they had known. Yet this exchange of knowledge soon revealed a fundamental divide. One of the younger myth keepers, a man named Kalen, gestured enthusiastically toward the glowing gem. "Its potential is immense," he insisted. "Imagine its light channeled in great ceremonies, used to bless entire cities or heal blighted lands. Such power should not be confined to a single village for simple comforts." The air grew still, the villagers exchanging uncertain glances. Their magic was in the quiet moment, the shared story, the personal peace. Alara listened patiently, then knelt and placed her palm flat on the moss near the gem. "Its power is not in its scale, but in its sincerity," she explained softly. "A grand ritual is a magnificent spectacle, but it passes. The magic that mends a single fearful heart, or inspires one child to see wonder in the world, that is the magic that endures. It grows not by being spent, but by being shared in acts of genuine connection." To demonstrate, she did not perform a feat of great power. Instead, she invited Kalen to sit with her and the children. She asked him to share a hope from his own childhood, something simple and true. Hesitantly, he spoke of longing for a friend during a lonely season. As he shared this small, honest memory, Alara began to weave it into a tale of a lonely star finding its constellation. The dragon's tear responded, not with a brilliant flash, but by casting their combined story into the air as a soft, swirling dance of light that felt profoundly personal and deeply comforting. Kalen fell silent, watching the gentle illusion, and a look of profound understanding softened his features. The myth keepers departed not as critics, but as converts to this philosophy of intimate magic, their scrolls now filled with notes on the power of community and shared narrative. Their visit left Alara with a restless curiosity, her mind alive with the vast tapestry of stories their scrolls had only hinted at. What other wonders slept in forgotten corners of the world, waiting for a gentle touch to awaken them? Yet as she watched the gem's steady light that evening, surrounded by the familiar sounds of her home, she felt a deep certainty. The greatest adventures were not always found in traveling far away, but in nurturing the boundless, magical country of the heart, right where she was. The first festival of Starlight began as the sun dipped below the horizon, with villagers spreading blankets across the common green and lighting small lanterns that flickered like captured fireflies. At the center of it all, The dragon's tear gem rested on its mossy pedestal, its usual gentle pulse seeming to quicken in anticipation of the coming night. As the first stars pricked the darkening sky, Alara invited everyone to share a memory, a dream, or a simple thought they carried close to their heart. One by one, voices rose in the quiet air, and with each story told, the gem responded. It cast their words upward, weaving the narratives into a living tapestry of soft, swirling colors that danced beneath the celestial dome, a canopy of shared imagination that connected every person looking up. For a beautiful, suspended hour, the village was wrapped in a single, breathing story. Then a whisper of unease moved through the crowd as a bank of thick clouds, unexpected and swift, began to drift across the sky, swallowing the stars one by one. The vibrant canopy of light above them flickered, its colors dimming as the direct starlight was choked off. A worried murmur spread. Would the magic fail without the stars to guide it? Was their shared wonder too fragile to withstand a simple change in the weather? The tension was a physical weight, a test of faith, not just in the gem, but in the invisible bonds they had been weaving all evening. Alara felt the collective doubt like a chill, and she knew they could not simply wait and hope for the clouds to pass. She stood, her voice calm but clear as it carried over the anxious crowd. She asked them to remember the ancient lullaby, the one she had learned on the mountain, a melody meant to call to the stars themselves. She began to sing, her voice a single, steady thread in the gloom. At first, only a few voices joined hers, tentative and soft. But as the familiar, comforting notes wove through the gathering, more and more villagers added their voices to the song. It was not a loud or forceful chorus, but a harmonious, heartfelt hum that seemed to vibrate in the very air around them. They sang not to command the sky, but to join it, to become part of the same cosmic rhythm the dragons had once known. As the final note of the melody rose from the crowd, a collective gasp followed. The oppressive cloud cover did not simply blow away, it thinned, parting directly above them in a perfect, circular window to the heavens. The full glory of the starry night shone through, and the dragon's tear gem, now bathed in that pure, undiluted starlight, erupted in a silent, brilliant pulse of silver and gold. The canopy of light above them returned, brighter and more intricate than before, each swirling color now edged with a sharp, celestial clarity. In that moment, the magic transformed from a spectacle to a profound, shared experience. The gem's light did not just shine upon them, it seemed to pulse with them, its rhythm syncing with the relieved, joyous beat of their hearts. It was a palpable acknowledgement of their collective spirit, a confirmation that their unity was the truest source of its power. As the festival slowly wound down and families began to gather their things, Alara remained for a while by the gem. She placed a hand on the warm stone of the shrine, feeling a new, deep hum of contentment resonating from within the dragon's tear. It was a promise, silent and sure, that this was only the first of many such nights, and that the well of stories was now deeper than ever before. A dream weaver from the neighboring valley arrived as the first frost touched the grass, her eyes shadowed by more than just travel weariness. She spoke of a community where sleep brought no rest, where nights were filled with fearful visions that left families weary and drained by dawn. She had heard of the dragon's tear, and she came to Alara with a humble request, not for a grand solution, but for a gentle touch of its calming light. Alara did not hesitate. Gathering the gem, She and the Dreamweaver set out at once, the familiar path giving way to a trail that led into a landscape muted by a persistent, lingering gloom. The very air in the valley felt heavy, and the shadows clung to the corners of the cottages with a stubborn resistance. When Alara first raised the dragon's tear, its light did not push back the darkness so much as it pooled softly around them, a small island of serenity in a sea of unease. The magic required not force, but a patient, repeated presence. Night after night, they visited homes, and Alara would weave simple, protective tales of quiet forests and still waters, while the gem translated her words into gentle dreams that slowly, carefully, began to mend the frayed edges of the community's rest. She saw how the children, once tossing in their beds, would gradually still, their breathing deepening into a peaceful rhythm as the stories took root. Yet Alara knew her presence was temporary. A true and lasting peace could not depend on a visitor. She decided to stay, spending her days not just performing the magic, but teaching it. She sat with the Dreamweaver and the families, showing them how to find the rhythms in their own hearts that could craft soothing narratives. She taught them that a story did not need to be epic to be powerful, that the memory of a warm hearth or the sound of a calm river could be a shield against the night. She was not giving them a crutch, but showing them how to walk on their own. As the valley slowly rediscovered its quiet joy, a new understanding settled upon Alara. The dragon's tear's purpose was not confined to her village storytelling circle. Its magic was a seed that could be carried, a light meant to be shared. But with that realization came a quiet tension. Each journey to answer a call for help would mean time away from her own home, her own people. She felt the first gentle pull of a larger responsibility, a balance she would need to learn between the local needs she cherished and the distant cries she could now hear. When she finally returned to her village, the Dreamweaver's profound gratitude was a warm weight in her heart. Standing once more by the shrine, she watched the gem's steady pulse and reflected on the invisible threads now stretching from this quiet clearing. A story told here had created a ripple, traveling through her to calm nightmares in a distant valley. It was a quiet proof that magic and empathy, once set in motion, could touch lives far beyond any single hearth or home. The crisp scent of parchment filled Alara's small cottage as she carefully laid down the first page of her new book. Inspired by the stories gathered from her travels and the quiet wisdom of the dragon's tear, she began to weave a new kind of myth. She would recount an ancient dragon legend, and as she wrote, the gem resting on her desk would pulse, casting soft, shimmering images onto the page. A silhouette of a great wing here, a constellation of 7 stars there. These were not mere drawings, but captured light, a fusion of the oldest tales and the most recent memories of her village. The book itself became a living artifact, its pages glowing faintly with an internal magic that seemed to breathe with the stories it held. When she first brought it to a community gathering, reading aloud the story of the Fox Guardian, while the gem projected its silver form, dancing above the pages, the villagers watched in rapt silence. The book quickly became a treasured heirloom, a tangible piece of their shared soul. Reading from it during festivals or quiet evenings became a ritual that strengthened their bonds, and children would trace the glowing illustrations with their small fingers, their own imaginations sparked to create the next chapter in their culture's ongoing story. Yet this new creation was not met with universal praise. A quiet debate began to simmer, particularly among the elder storytellers who had carried the oral tradition their entire lives. Our stories live in the breath between the teller and the listener, one elder remarked, his voice tinged with concern. They change with each telling, shaped by the moment and the mood of the crowd. Can words trapped on a page ever hold that same living warmth? There was a genuine fear that this beautiful book, for all its magic, might slowly strangle the spontaneous, personal touch that had always been the heart of their craft. They worried the village would become reliant on the text, that the art of crafting a tale in the moment would be lost to the comfort of simply reading what was already written. The stakes of this cultural shift were deeply felt, pitting the desire for preservation against the fear of losing the very spirit they sought to save. Alara listened to these concerns with profound respect, understanding the delicate balance between honoring the past and embracing the future. Her decision was both practical and philosophical. She declared that the book would be a guide and an inspiration, never a replacement for the living voice. She placed it on a special stand in the storytelling circle, but she herself continued to tell stories without it, encouraging others to do the same. She began gatherings by reading a passage from the book, then asked everyone to build upon it, to add their own details and twists, blending the stability of the written word with the vibrant energy of oral improvisation. This balanced approach did not diminish their tradition, it enriched it, creating a beautiful dialogue between the anchor of the past and the sail of the present. The dragon's tear itself seemed to affirm this harmony. During one such blended storytelling night, as an elder wove a new ending to an old dragon myth, the gem upon the shrine flared. In the open book, the existing illustration of a starlit dragon shimmered, and a new, previously hidden image emerged alongside it, a detailed map of their own valley, seen from high above as if from a dragon's wings. A collective gasp went through the crowd. The book, they realized, was not a closed volume. It held layers of magic and mystery, its pages responding to the community's evolving spirit by revealing new illustrations, new connections, and deeper meanings. It became a collaborative project with the gem itself, a never-ending story that grew with them. As Alara carefully added the final tale from her recent journey to the last page, she felt a deep and quiet fulfillment settle in her heart. These stories, now held in both breath and parchment, would continue to comfort and inspire, weaving their gentle magic long after her own voice had fallen silent. This legacy of shared wonder felt complete, a perfect tapestry of memory and hope, until a lone traveler arrived at the village gate with news that would unravel a thread she never knew was loose. The first snow fell softly, but the winter that followed was unforgiving. Deep drifts piled high against cottage doors, and the world outside grew silent under a thick blanket of white. Storytelling moved indoors, and Alara brought the dragon's tear gem from the shrine into the warmth of the hearths. There, its light cast a cozy, golden glow on the walls of every home, and the stories it helped weave were no longer of grand adventures, but of quiet wonders. They told of hibernating bears dreaming of summer berries, and of patient seeds sleeping beneath the frozen earth, tales that wrapped families in a shared sense of waiting and warmth. These small, imaginative moments became a daily ritual, a creative anchor that helped everyone endure the seemingly endless, dark afternoons. Then the true test came. A blizzard descended with a fury that blotted out the world, howling winds isolating the village completely for days on end. Doors could not be opened, and the familiar paths between homes vanished. In the profound quiet that followed the storm's roar, a new kind of chill set in, the creeping fear of loneliness and the gnawing worry that their magic, however comforting, was too small a flame against such a vast and indifferent cold. Ilara felt this anxiety threading through the village. She knew that light and stories, when hoarded in single homes, could grow dim, so she devised a plan, a rotating schedule of story nights that would physically connect them despite the barriers. Using a system of colored cords strung between the closest cottages, a simple signal would indicate which home was hosting that evening. Families would bundle up and make the short, careful trek through a narrow path dug in the snow, arriving with flushed cheeks and shared laughter to gather around a designated hearth. This deliberate act of coming together, of sharing not just a tale, but the very space by the fire, transformed their isolation into an opportunity for deeper connection. The gem's light burned with an unwavering steadiness throughout those long weeks, its constant glow a direct reflection of their collective spirit. It was no longer just a magical artifact, but the visible heartbeat of their community, a promise they made to one another that no one would face the dark alone. When the thaw finally arrived and the first green shoots pushed through the melting snow, the village emerged not just intact, but fortified. The gem, now returned to its shrine, seemed to shine with a richer, deeper light, as if it had absorbed the resilience of every story shared in the close warmth of those winter rooms. It stood ready, as they all were, for the gentle unfoldings of a new season. The first glowing orb appeared on a sun-drenched afternoon, a tiny sphere of captured laughter floating just above the mossy shrine. A young boy named Finn, still breathless from a game of chase, had simply placed his hand on the dragon's tear gem while thinking of the moment his father had lifted him high onto his shoulders. The gem pulsed, and from its heart drifted this perfect, shimmering bubble of pure joy. Soon, the clearing was alive with them, a constellation of happy memories conjured by the village children. One orb held the warmth of a shared meal, another the dizzying spin of a summer cartwheel, each a silent, beautiful story held in the air. These memory orbs became the foundation of a new kind of play. The children began to gather them, arranging the glowing spheres into sequences that told simple tales of friendship found, a lost toy returned, or a shared secret under the willow tree. They called these their memory stories, and in weaving them together, they learned to see the world through one another's eyes, their games becoming gentle lessons in empathy and shared happiness. A quiet girl named Sari, who often played alone, created a story from the memory of a stranger, helping her find her way home, and the other children watched her orb with a new, thoughtful respect. Not every adult watched this new development with comfort. Some of the elders, who revered the gem as a sacred, solemn artifact, voiced their concerns in hushed tones near the evening fire. They feared the children's playful energy might be too chaotic for such an ancient power, that a careless hand could disrupt the delicate magic they all depended on. They watched, their brows furrowed, as the children danced between the floating lights. But the children, in their innocent wisdom, approached the gem with a reverence that was entirely their own. They never grabbed or shouted around it, instead speaking to it in soft whispers, sharing their happiest thoughts as if confiding in a dear friend. They instinctively understood that the magic responded not to force, but to the purity of their feeling. This daily display of joyful respect began to soften the elders' worries. The generational gap bridged not by lectures, but by the silent, compelling language of wonder. Seeing this beautiful evolution, Alara began to gently guide their play. She invited the children to combine their favorite memory orbs each day, helping them weave the individual moments into a single, collective narrative that unfolded above the shrine as twilight fell. One evening, Finn's memory of flying on his father's shoulders merged with Sari's orb of a helpful stranger, blossoming into a story of a great, gentle giant who carried lost children home on a path of starlight. These shared tales became a nightly ritual for the entire village, a living tapestry woven from the threads of their children's happiest days. This daily practice did more than entertain. It rooted the next generation in the magic of their home. The children were not just playing with an ancient relic, they were building a personal relationship with it, learning its rhythms and its language through the currency of their own joy. They were becoming, in their own playful way, the gem's future guardians, ensuring its light would be cherished and understood long after the current storytellers had passed. Watching the children's delighted faces, illuminated by the soft glow of their own memories, Alara felt a profound sense of rightness settle in her soul. The dragon's tear had not just found a new use, it had found its perfect partners, the young, curious hearts of the village, unburdened by doubt and overflowing with simple happiness, were the natural keepers of this magic, their innocence a key that unlocked yet another layer of the gem's endless capacity for wonder. The night of the great meteor shower arrived, and the villagers gathered in the clearing, their faces turned upward to the velvet sky. Alara placed the dragon's tear gem upon its mossy pedestal, and as the first streaks of light began to trace their brilliant paths overhead, she invited everyone to whisper a single, heartfelt wish into the quiet air. One by one, they stepped forward, their hopes given voice, and the gem began to glow. It gathered their whispered dreams, and in a breathtaking display, it cast them back toward the heavens, each wish becoming a new, miniature shooting star that joined the celestial dance, weaving the villagers' most personal hopes into the fabric of the cosmos itself. With every wish offered, the gem seemed to drink in the starlight, its own inner light growing more intense, sparkling with captured stardust and deepening the profound connection everyone felt to the vast, starry expanse above. Yet the harmony of the ceremony was not perfect. A merchant wished silently for his rival's business to falter, and a young man hoped for a treasure that would make him the envy of all. When these self-centered intentions touched the gem, its steady light faltered, flickering with an uncertain, dimming pulse. The stream of projected stars stuttered, and a wave of unease passed through the crowd. Alara felt the discord like a sudden chill. She did not scold or single anyone out, but instead raised her voice in a gentle reminder that echoed the gem's own wisdom. The truest magic, she explained, flourishes not in solitary gain, but in shared happiness. Our collective well-being is the source of its brightest light. Inspired by her words, the merchant looked at his rival, and with a softened heart, reshaped his wish into one for their shared prosperity. The young man thought of his friends, and wished instead for adventures they could all enjoy together. As these intentions were purified, shifting from personal want to generous hope, the gem responded instantly. Its light stabilized, burning with a purer, warmer radiance. This realignment of collective spirit created a powerful surge, and the dragon's tear released a soft, visible wave of soothing energy that washed over the entire gathering. Aches and pains that had nagged at elders seemed to ease, not in a miraculous cure, but in a profound lessening of discomfort. Two friends who had exchanged sharp words earlier in the week felt their lingering irritation melt away, replaced by a quiet understanding and the unspoken desire to reconcile. The gem had demonstrated its most profound power, the ability to transform pure, communal intention into tangible, gentle action within their world. As the final meteor faded from the sky, the gem rested serenely upon its moss, its light no longer a brilliant spectacle, but a deep, constant glow. It was a quiet promise, a testament to the night's lessons, that every sincere wish offered for the good of all would always find its way to the stars. A subtle silver glow began to thread its way through the deep green of the whispering woods. Within days, saplings with bark like polished moonlight and leaves that chimed softly in the breeze had grown to maturity, their branches humming with the same ancient melodies Alara had first heard on the mountain. She understood instantly. This was the forest's own gift, a direct response to the dragon's tears' enduring presence in the nearby shrine. The woods were not merely tolerating their human neighbors, they were actively joining the chorus. The villagers discovered that the fallen silver leaves, when carefully gathered, could be pressed into a luminous parchment perfect for recording stories, their faint hum still audible when held to the ear. The supple branches, if shaped with reverence, created flutes and harps whose music seemed to weave tranquility directly into the air. This was more than a new resource. It was a new language of art, a way to blend human creativity with the ancient voice of the land itself. But this bounty came with a vital condition. The first villager to eagerly snap a branch from a living tree watched in horror as the silver light in the surrounding leaves dimmed for a moment, a palpable wave of sorrow passing through the grove. It was clear that taking without permission was a violation of the newfound trust. Alara knew they needed guidance from the source. She returned to the oldest part of the woods, sitting at the base of a great elder tree, whose roots delved deep into the world's memory. She did not demand answers, but offered a gentle song of thanks, her voice blending with the tree's own resonant hum. Over several days, a quiet understanding formed in her mind, a set of simple, sacred rules. Only leaves that had fallen naturally, or branches offered by a gentle wind, were to be collected. For anything more, one must first sit with the tree, share a story or a song, and wait for a feeling of permission, a warming of the bark under one's hand. This ritual of gratitude became as important as the harvest itself. Before any crafting began, the villagers would gather and speak their thanks aloud, their words causing the dragon's tear gem at the shrine to pulse in a soft, approving rhythm. This mutual respect did not deplete the woods, it seemed to enrich them. The silver groves spread, their melodies growing more complex and beautiful with each passing season. This thriving harmony began to attract other, shyer residents of the forest. A family of badgers, their fur tipped with silver, would sometimes appear at the edge of the storytelling circle, listening intently. Shimmering, butterfly-like spirits would alight on a newly strung harp, their touch leaving the instrument in tune for weeks. These benevolent beings never spoke in words, but they shared their presence, their ancient, patient energy, adding a deep, grounding wisdom to the village's growing tapestry of myth. The line between the village and the wild, between human story and natural magic, became beautifully, wonderfully blurred. For Alara, this was the fulfillment of her deepest hope. It felt as if the entire world, from the highest star to the deepest root, was gently weaving itself into one continuous, cozy story, a narrative of belonging that asked only for a grateful heart to hear it. The first gathering of tales was announced as the leaves began to turn, a simple invitation for anyone with a story in their heart to share it beneath the autumn sky. Alara placed the dragon's tear gem in the center of the great storytelling circle, and as the first villager stepped forward, a traveler from a distant valley, the gem pulsed in soft encouragement. The story that unfolded was one of a lost lamb guided home by a trail of glowing mushrooms, and as the words filled the air, the gem wove them into a shimmering, gentle illusion that danced above the crowd. That first year, the gathering was small and heartfelt, but the magic it created was undeniable. Word of the event traveled on the wind and in the tales of merchants, and by the third year, the village was welcoming seekers from across the land, all drawn by the promise of a story that could truly comfort the soul. The gathering became a beacon, a seasonal anchor point, where imagination was both given and received, spreading waves of quiet wonder far beyond their borders. With this growth came a beautiful complexity that tested Alara's spirit. Coordinating lodging for so many guests, managing the feast, and ensuring every voice felt heard became a colossal task that stretched her thin. The week before the gathering was now a blur of logistics, and she feared the intimate, spontaneous magic of the event was being buried under lists and preparations. The very personal connection that was the heart of the tradition felt endangered by its own success. She knew she could not carry it all alone. Her decision was to step back from the center, not away from it. She sought out a small group of young storytellers she had mentored, including the once shy Anya and the thoughtful Finn, now a young man with a calm presence. She entrusted them with the practical orchestration of the gathering, guiding them to see the tasks not as chores, but as the first acts of a shared story. They learned to arrange the seating so the acoustics were perfect, to prepare the food so it felt like a gift, and to welcome each visitor as an old friend. This delegation was not a surrender of control, but an expansion of guardianship, allowing the event to be infused with their vibrant new energies while its sacred core remained untouched. During the gatherings, the dragon's tear gem was no longer a passive witness. It became an active participant, its light swelling with a palpable pride as each story unfolded. More remarkably, it began to guide the flow of the evening in subtle ways. When a tale of overcoming hardship was needed, the gem would cast a particularly warm glow on a certain individual, gently encouraging them to step forward. When the crowd's energy needed calming, it might pulse in time with a slower, more rhythmic story. It seemed to intuitively select the narratives that the community most needed to hear, ensuring a perfect balance of joy, solace, and inspiration. This conscious interplay between the artifact and the people cemented the gathering as something truly transcendental, a ritual where magic and humanity collaborated to create something greater than the sum of its parts. After the latest gathering, as the last of the visitors departed and the village settled into a contented quiet, Alara sat by the shrine, her hand resting on the warm moss. She watched the gem's steady, satisfied pulse and felt a deep and certain peace. The cycle of tales was now self-perpetuating, nurtured by new voices and guided by an ancient heart, a legacy of comfort and wonder that would echo far into the future. The harvest that year was meager, the grain thin, and the fruits small, and a chill of unease settled over the village long before the first frost. The practical hardships were manageable, but the emotional toll was a heavier burden. Whispers began in the corners, quiet voices questioning if their luck had turned, if the magic they had come to rely on was somehow failing them. This collective doubt was a poison, and the dragon's tear gem felt it deeply. Its light, once a steady beacon, began to flicker uncertainly, its pulse growing faint and irregular, as if the very heart of their community was skipping beats. The fear was a self-fulfilling prophecy, their anxiety feeding a cycle that dimmed the magic that usually sustained them. Alara watched this slow dimming with a profound sense of urgency. She knew that logic or reassurances would not be enough to mend this kind of spiritual weariness. She called for a gathering at the shrine, not for a festive story, but for a shared moment of honesty. The villagers came, their faces etched with worry, the air thick with a silence that was heavy with unspoken fears. Alara did not begin with a tale of dragons or distant stars. She knelt before the flickering gem and spoke of the soil, of how even the richest earth must sometimes lie fallow to gather strength for the next planting. She spoke of the quiet resilience of roots pushing through hard ground and the patience required to trust in a cycle larger than a single season. Then, she invited them to share their own heaviness. One by one, they spoke. A farmer confessed his fear of not providing for his family. A mother shared her anxiety for her children's future. Each admission was a release, a shared burden laid gently at the foot of the shrine. Alara listened, her own heart aching with theirs, and she began to weave their individual struggles into a new narrative. She told them a story of a great, slumbering earth dragon, whose deep, slow breaths were the turning of the seasons. The dragon was not absent or angry, she explained, but dreaming, its energy focused deep below, preparing the world for a renewal they could not yet see. Their hardship was not a punishment, but a part of this deep, necessary rest. As she wove their real fears into this mythic framework, giving their sorrow a context and a purpose, the dragon's tear gem began to change. Its flickering steadied, then brightened, glowing with a soft, amber warmth. When a young child, clutching her mother's hand, whispered a hope for the spring flowers, the gem flared. A wave of pure, golden light erupted from its core, not a blinding flash, but a gentle, washing radiance that flowed over every person, every home, every field. It was a light that felt like understanding, like a shared breath after a long-held tension. It did not erase their challenges, but it restored their courage to face them together. In that moment, the village understood that the gem's magic was not a shield against hardship, but a mirror for their own collective heart. Its brightest light was not fueled by endless joy, but by the courageous, empathetic unity they found even in the midst of sorrow. The true enchantment had always been their choice to hold hope for one another, a power no poor harvest could ever diminish. The dragon's tear gem rests in its mossy shrine, its gentle pulse a quiet rhythm that has come to feel like the village's own heartbeat. Alara, her hair now silver as the fox coat, often sits on a smooth stone bench nearby, her hands folded in her lap. She watches as a new generation gathers around the glowing stone, their faces bathed in its soft light. A young woman named Anya, who once whispered stories of moonlight moths, now leads the evening tales, her voice steady and sure. A young man named Finn, who once conjured memory orbs of joyful games, teaches the children how to listen for the forest's hum. Alara's role is no longer to tell the stories herself, but to be a quiet witness to their unfolding, a guardian of the space where they can grow. She smiles, a deep and peaceful contentment settling in her soul, seeing that the legacy she carried home is now carried forward by many hands, each adding their own unique thread to the ever-expanding tapestry. The magic is no longer a quest to be completed, but a living, breathing presence woven into the daily life of the community. On quiet afternoons, the very air seems to shimmer with the echo of ancient dragon songs, a resonant hum that encourages creativity and calms restless thoughts. Children playing near the woods sometimes pause, certain they have seen a flash of silver fur between the trees, a guardian who never truly left. And in the deep of night, when the village is wrapped in slumber, the gem's light casts soft, shifting patterns on cottage walls, inspiring dreams of soaring flight and starlit paths. The stories told here are no longer just for entertainment. They are a fundamental nourishment for the spirit, cozy tales that ease the transition into sleep and fill the landscape of imagination with warmth and wonder. This quiet, persistent magic has created invisible threads of connection, linking heart to heart and home to home, proving that the simplest act of sharing a story can indeed leave the world a little brighter. you.